Welcome to Proven and Probable, where we focus on metals, mining, and more. I'm your host, Maurice Jackson. Today, we're conducting an exclusive interview specifically for accredited investors that are seeking to identify a private gold junior mining company that is approaching IPO listing on the TSXV, scheduled for the third or fourth quarter of 2017. Our featured company is Rover Metals. We would like to share that today's interview is time sensitive and that this interview will have some forward-looking statements. Joining us for a conversation on this unique value proposition is the CEO of Rover Metals, Judson Coulter. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me, Maurice.
For our listeners, we wish to convey that within the next 30 days, we are delighted to share that we will have a position in Rover Metals for the virtues we will convey in today's message. Mr. Coulter, for first-time listeners, please share who is Rover Metals and why is there so much discussion and interest in your flagship project, the Uptown Gold Project?
Thanks, Maurice. Absolutely. Yeah. Rover Metals is a Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada-based natural resource exploration company. We are focused on the exploration and development of precious metals within Canada, and specifically with a focus on the Northern Territories in Canada. Our Uptown Gold Project is getting a lot of attention just in part due to the new school of geology, which is finding large gold deposits in Archean lode granitoid type structures, as well as just the fact that the Uptown Gold Project is on the outer city limits of Yellowknife, which itself was a historic, or is a historic, mining town dating back to 1938 with the Giant Mine, and then subsequent to that, Con, and now there's a lot of resource players in and around that area.
Now, Judson, what is the driving thesis for Rover Metals in regards to the Uptown Gold Project?
You know, I think when we sought out to find a property of merit in the precious metals space, we were really operating under the thesis that the best place to find a new world-class gold deposit is in the shadow of an existing head frame of a historic giant, like in this case, the Giant gold mine. And you can literally stand on the Giant mine head frame location and throw a rock and hit our property.
Now, your thesis, it makes sense. The best place to find gold is next to a place that has already discovered gold. When and how was Rover Metals able to acquire the Uptown Gold Project in such a highly contested and sought out district?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, last summer we went about really trying to tie this property up, and I think one of the reasons why it had been overlooked, because there was a historic open pit at Uptown in the mid 70s, and again, it's getting back to that new school of geology where right now we're just starting to see a resurgence of that area as well. And with TerraX's operations on our northern border, but the granitoid hosted Archean lode gold deposits, just 2 weeks ago, IM Gold proved up a large granitoid hosted deposit in Ontario. So for us, there was some luck. I think there was some timing with a late stage greenfields project like Uptown that had also just been overlooked because there was some early stage work still needing to be done. So for us, I think that's just shows I think some credibility towards our technical team and our board that we were able to get what we feel was a very good deal by acquiring this property a year ago when the market was still relatively tough for projects of this stage.
Now, let me ask you this. Are there any reversionary interests, meaning is this 100% owned by Rover Metals?
Our option agreement is such that we have a carried working interest of 75% after doing roughly 1.6 million in exploration work on the property, and that's in Canadian dollars. And we've got a 3-year period. We can accelerate that, of course, to do that investment. We can also do it up to 100% ownership if we issue 4.5% of our current outstanding equity, so certainly we'll accelerate that process if we see this summer's program gives us the results that we expect to see.
How about the NSR on this?
Yeah, there's a 2% NSR buyable down to 1 for I think it's $1 million is the buy down price.
All right. Now, please provide us with some historical background on gold in and around Yellowknife, which dates back, as you mentioned earlier, to 1938.
Yeah, that's correct. So the giant mine, which really I think is the reason that Yellowknife, that city of 20,000 people, exists today, is that historic gold mine. A giant produced 8 million ounces of gold. It was a high grade deposit. There was, I believe, 2 surface open pit operations, as well as the more extensive underground operation, that went to 450 meters. About 16 grams per ton was the average grade on that property. And then you've got the Con mine, which is just south of the city of Yellowknife. Similar story there, 6 million ounces, even to further depth. I think it was 4,500 feet. And now with our property, there's been a resurgence on the interest in our property. In 1975, there was an open pit operation that was operated. It went down to about 10 meters of depth. It was high graded. I believe it was 149 grams per ton that was high graded out of that open pit. And then, more recently, when this property was held under option by a different junior, that was in 2012, 2013, there was a small drilling program conducted. The average grades coming out of the Rod Zone area on the historic drilling was 10 grams per ton, and the channel sampling out of Rod Zone was 13 grams per ton. Getting open pit potential there, and averages around 3 grams per ton at Fox South.
Now, more recently, your optioner conducted its own exploration program in 2016, respectively. What were the results from the exploration, and that has really improved the confidence in the thesis?
Yeah, absolutely. So that title went back to the optioner, as you'd mentioned there, in 2016. And they believed enough in the project that they invested about $250,000 to further develop the project. There was some structural geology work done that discovered 3 new surface veins. One of the surface samples on that was 145 grams per ton. Again, that for us, that continues to indicate the economics of an open pit scenario. There was also some geochem and some magnetics done with flyovers, which really, suggested that the results that we've had historically are not isolated to the southern limits of this property. The property itself is about 32 square kilometers. And what we saw from last summer's program is that there's actually 2 large mineralized trends which are going, entirely across the property on a northeast trend, which and then on the northern border really runs right up into where Terra X has staked their claims.
And just to confirm, we're discussing diamond drilling, is that correct?
That's right, diamond core drilling, yeah.
And talk to us about the shear zone and the strike length here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got that length at the Fox South area is about 400 meters on surface, and we've identified another 100 meters at Rod. So that's about, right now, 500 meters of length.
And the shear zone is 60, is that correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
All right. So we're dealing here basically with the potential of an open pit, early state brownfield exploration project next to a historic world-class deposit. You've got historical data. The location in and of itself makes the opportunity quite interesting. But to have open pit, that would be really icing on the cake here. Is the goal here to sell the project or develop it into a commercial scale mine?
Well, I think we've got sort of a two-tiered approach. The short-term goal is to develop this into an open pit mining scenario in about 3 years' time. Ideally, if we're able to get the right permits to do toll milling, there is a need for that local community to have a toll milling type facility close to town. We've also, as we do want to prove up the larger area of the property itself and not just focus in and around Fox and Rod. And in doing so, we also want to go below about 30 meters of depth to take some shots to see if there's some blue sky. If we find a lot of mineralization, which is typical to the reverse faulting and the high grade of that geology, then we certainly will try to move towards more of a proven resource type model, in which case the property likely would be resold before we ever were able to finish the open pit.
Talk to us about infrastructure, because that has a lot to do with your capital expenditures here. What's the infrastructure like?
Absolutely. So we're about 5 kilometers right from downtown Yellowknife. What that does, that gives us access to some top talent in the field. No need to build camps. The airport is about 3 kilometers from the property. There is a winter road that goes into the Rod Zone, which is where the historic open pit is. There's already an all-season road that runs through the northeast part of the property, which you can almost walk into Fox South from. We've also got power lines that used to feed right into the giant head frame. And that power line is actually right at location for Rod for that historic open pit, as well as really the focus for a lot of our exploration program this summer. The economics are just fantastic, especially for a northern property, which can have quite high exploration costs. We're in terms of being able to get the maximum amount of return for our exploration dollar, this property is really perfect for that.
Switching gears, I recently interviewed legendary investors Rick Rule and Doug Casey, and their number one criteria for deploying capital, it wasn't the latent material in the ground, it's the people. And Rover Metals has done a remarkable job by having in place serially successful industry leaders on your board of directors, your management, and technical teams. Let's discuss the team that makes up the Uptown Gold Project come to fruition.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Maurice. Clearly there is no I in Rover Metals, but there is a team. And that was, I think, the longest process in building the company to where it's at today. We embarked on, the company is about 3 years old, even though we've only had the Uptown Gold Project for the last year. The first couple years of building this company was really, recruiting, building relationships, and getting the right people involved. And that's reflected, starting in our board of directors. We've got and our advisory team, which includes Tukey Angus. Tukey, I believe, traces his pedigree back to Murray Pesum and the early exploration markets in Vancouver. Certainly he's an angel investor in a lot of resource deals in Canada. He's our 4th largest shareholder, our business development advisor, and is very active with our company on a weekly basis. We've also got another rock star director in Keith Minty. Keith Minty currently serves as a C-suite exec at Ora Vista Gold, which is proving up a world-class open pit mine in the Quebec area. He's also a director at Orin Resources, and I believe Keith was pretty instrumental in bringing the Homestake resources to the team at the Homestake property to the team at Orin. Certainly, and then just go down the list. You've got Lou Cavella, who's another one of our directors. Lou's a geologist that is, his entire career has been focused on the north. He's a founding partner at Aurora Geosciences, which is, at least in Whitehorse and Yellowknife, considered to be the foremost, geotechnical consultants in terms of geophysics and structural geology. So, Lou's, a big part of, I think, our longer-term growth strategy as we continue to, build the company and add new projects into the portfolio.
How about the management? Let's start with the CEO, Judson. What makes him qualified for the task at hand?
No, that's great. Let's start, I guess, just with success in the sector itself. My first win in the mining resource sector was the Dolly Varden Silver Project. That's up in the Golden Triangle area, very close to Pretium's Brucejack property. I was a founder, much like the similar scenario here with Rover. We acquired that asset with Dolly in 2010. It had about 500,000 ounces of silver at that time. We built the company up, recruited the original founding team, and now look at that project today where Hecla's taken it over. There's 12 million ounces of silver. Similar story with Rover. This is the grassroots. We've got a greenfields, late stage greenfields property in Uptown, and hoping to take it to a big home run. The other thing, I guess, with myself, part of my passion is getting out there and recruiting and meeting people, building relationships, and trying to surround myself with people that are smarter than me. And I think that's a key to success. My background is a little less traditional for a CEO of a resource company. I'm accounting, finance background. Spent 6 years of my career working in the United States, down in Washington State in private equity, and have been back in Canada since 2010 working in the resource sector.
Talk to us about the complementary pieces here. Who are the other managing members, and what specific skill sets do they bring to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. So our COO and co-founder of Rover Metals is a gentleman by the name of Ron Wu. Ron's a P engineer as well as an MBA, and really brings a lot of technical experience to the team. Ron started his career at Hunter Dickinson here in Vancouver, and more recently he was running production projects, Walter Energy's coal properties up in northern BC, as well as Leadcore. So Ron's done it on a large scale, and I think what's exciting for both Ron and I is the ability to take a project from the early stages and then right through to production with our open pit mining plan. We've also got on the geology side, our VP exploration is a gentleman by the name of Raul Sanibria. Since immigrating from Spain to Canada several years ago, Raul's been responsible for defining several deposits down in South America and Colombia, and has had some great success in the precious metals space. Most recently, he was VP of Exploration for Red Eagle Exploration. That was formerly CB Gold, and I think with his 2-year-old daughter, he was more than happy to be back in Vancouver. He's also working, in addition to being our VP of Exploration, he's working on another gold project in the Golden Triangle here in BC as well. So, I think we're very well suited in terms of, looking at our team from the board all the way down to management, people that have had serial success in this sector and know how to, raise money, but also develop the resource.
I just want to reemphasize that. Serially successful, germane to the task at hand. This is quite impressive. This is the number one feature, in my opinion, here that has really captivated my attention is the team here. Let's discuss some numbers here. How much cash and cash equivalents do you have?
Well, it's good that you've asked that, because the last 24 hours have actually been, quite generous to us. So we're now up to on the current financing, 290,000 is our current cash position. Our commitment for the Uptown Gold project that we made with our title holder was a minimum of 350,000. Our lead investor has given us a guarantee that they will infill the rest of the 350, so we're about 60,000 short of that at the moment. But we are there is about 260,000 in room left in this current financing. But we're, at this point, well suited to take that down over the next few months.
Now let's talk about some historical transactions here. Talk to us about how Rover Metals has applied capital. Are we talking about a lifestyle company here, or actually putting this into the ground here?
Well, Certainly, it's been very lean, since we acquired Uptown, in September of last year under option. I think the round prior to the month of June, we'd raised about 200,000. The allocation of those funds was, getting the word out about the project. We really, shopped Uptown Gold all over Vancouver. We took it to a few microcap conferences in the U.S., as well as most recently to Toronto, PDAC. I spent 2 months following PDAC in Toronto, building relationships, getting the story out. That's reflected in part by Keith Minty joining our board in April. We've also been working that are up, major exploration companies, I should say, that are already up in the north, trying to seed them or get make sure that they're part of the next financing we do, and building relationships with the PI financials of the world, as we sort of try and identify a lead brokerage firm for being public here in Q3, Q4.
Talk to us about sweat equity. You and I were talking about that offline.
Yeah, you bet. So I guess our pre-money capitalization, there's 21 million shares out in the company. Roughly 18 million of that is held by management, board, and advisors. And really what that's a reflection of is, this company, as I'd mentioned earlier, is 3 years old. We didn't start taking salaries as a management team until October of last year. So a lot of the incentive for the first few years of the company, as we evaluated several other projects of merit, was really just on an equity-only basis. So, what's nice, I think, about that is as we near being public, the number of shares that are actually going to be free trading, because we're voluntary escrowing a lot of our founder stock. There's only going to be about 3 million shares from the early rounds of our company free trading on an IPO.
You mentioned conferences. You're in Vancouver. The Sprott Natural Resource Symposium is coming up here in July. Will you be in attendance?
I sure will, and we're really looking forward to that event. Some of our current investors, major investors, will also be there. We're, as I'd mentioned, we've got about, roughly 260,000 on this current financing that we're still trying to raise. So we hope to have some success at that event.
All right. What is your burn rate?
Our burn rate is right now currently is about 15,000 per month. I would expect that to stay, at 15 until Q4 of this year, when we intend to do a larger financing.
All right. How much debt do you have?
We have zero debt.
Quite impressive. Who is financing the project, and what is their level of commitment?
Absolutely. So, our lead investor for this summer's, drill financing program is actually an industrial minerals producer that's based out of the United States. I sit on the board of directors of that company as well, and strategically, the board of that company has made the decision that it's a natural hedge as an industrial minerals producer to be involved in a precious metal, specifically gold, exploration company that's got near-term production potential with the open pit scenario. So we've given this investor a right of first refusal on our next financing round, and I would expect that if we can, this summer show the economics of the open pit and continue to show that with our drill results, that they will likely take down the entire next financing, which is a great problem to have. So this may very well be the last private placement that our company Rover does this year as a result of again, our strategic investors' interest. We've also got on our investor list a company that is very capable of helping us to do marketing and get the word out and get interest in our stock once we are public in Q4, and that of course is Palisade Capital. They're an investor that yesterday has really just we've been talking to them for a few months, but we came to final terms yesterday, and happy to have and announce the strategic partnership with Palisade, and looking forward very much to working with that group.
And now, who are the major shareholders?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go back to roughly the pre-money capitalization of the company, which is 21 million shares. 18 million of that is held by management, advisors, and the current board of directors. So that's a big block of our shares on this current round. There's been some friends and family, which represents about 2 million. And then, as I'd mentioned, we have an industrial minerals producer, which is our lead investor, and as well as the Palisade Capital gentleman.
Now, Judson, based on the data we have available, what type of value proposition do we have before us in comparing the current versus the market price?
Well, that's a good question, and I think rather than trying to promise that this is going to be a 10 times return, which of course I think it will be, I think the best way is to just look at some of the comparable public company data, as well as just some comparisons with Giant. And so Giant had 2 surface open pit operations. The circumference of the Uptown Gold property, which is adjacent to Giant, is 32 square kilometers and a larger surface area. That area is typical of having high grade deposits to it, very deep, in Giant's case 450 meters. And I think if you look to our northern border, which is Terra X's North Belt properties, you'll see there is a comparable for a public company. I think Terra X has got roughly 6 times the land package, but their public, their market cap is, I believe about 32 times the market cap that we're currently at with this current financing. So, I think we don't necessarily need to prove up a large land package in order to get the market cap where Terra X is, but I think what we do need to show is that that depth of location in and around Yellowknife, where Giant and Con are, it's not just limited to the greenstones. I mean, we've got this new school of geology, which has now proven multiple times that Archean lode gold is hosted in granitoids, and so we're a granitoid deposit, and this is why this project has been historically overlooked. Again, I'll just cite a comparable, which is if you look at IM Gold in the last 2 weeks, they proved up a massive Archean lode granitoid deposit in Ontario, and that they've sold a portion of that for 195 million. So I think therein lies our story, and hopefully what we return to the market as a public company here as we develop this project over the next 2 or 3 years.
All right, multi-layered question here. What is the next unanswered question for Rover Metals? When can we expect a response? How much will the response cost? And what determines success?
Yeah, I think that's the answer. Is pretty short term here. We've got 350,000 that we've now I think we've raised roughly 80% of that as of today, and that within the next certainly by mid-September is when the assay results of this summer drilling program will be available, and we will know the economics of an open pit scenario, and we will also know an area play on the property, and and certainly we're not going to do a lot of drilling below 30 meters, but we will do a few holes, and we may get some very exciting blue sky on top of the open pit economics. So it's short term is the timing to knowing the value proposition here, and I believe by when our shares are being listed here in October, sort of November timeframe on the Toronto Venture, we hope to be able to tell the story of really this summer's drill program.
Last question for you. What did I forget to ask?
I think really just the vision for the company over the next 2 to 3 years. I think really we're going to develop this northern project, but I think it'll, our shareholders should be excited to see that, we will be adding in new projects of merit as we continue to grow the business. We have an outsourced business model so that the project management for the exploration work, in large part for the next 2 years at Uptown, will be managed by Aurora Geosciences. So that frees up a lot of the resources of the management team to evaluate new projects. And you've got serial guys like, Keith Minty and Tukey Angus on your team, as well as even, just looking at Raul, our VP Exploration. We've got, pretty high hopes on new projects of merit that we'll be bringing into the company.
Judson, before we close, talk to us about this press release that I just saw with the letter of intent.
Yeah, no, that is essentially, we'll be doing a reverse takeover of another private company, which is a reporting issuer. So they're a BC company. They have 150 shareholders. That will increase our shareholder count to over 200, and it qualifies us for a direct IPO on the Toronto Venture. The dilution is only 1.5 million shares to us. So, we believe that that's a much better value proposition than going into, a funded shell that is asking for a 30% premium over working capital. So much less dilutive to our shareholders.
Much welcome news here. Judson, if investors want to get more information about Rover Metals, please share the contact information.
Absolutely, yeah. The best way is to email info@rovermetals.com, and you can just go to our website as well at rovermetals.com.
And last but not least, please visit our website, www.provenandprobable.com, where we interview the most respected names in the natural resource space. The website again is www.provenandprobable.com. You may reach us at contact@provenandprobable.com. Judson Coulter of Rover Metals, thank you for joining us today on Proven and Probable.